Hey guys, welcome back. Chris Fry with Whipmix Corporation. And in this segment, we're going to take a look at some of the things you need to know and keep in mind when dealing with 3D print resins. Of course, there's the basic things to keep in mind when dealing with print resins, right? These curable photopolymers are a chemical. So most certainly keep in mind the most common things that you can think of from the standpoint of inhalation, skin contact, everything that you can think of that you think is basic, but please keep in mind you are dealing with a chemical. And when dealing with these resins on a regular basis, make sure you are, if possible, wearing an apron, most certainly wearing gloves. I can share a story with you. I know within the lab, it becomes very common. You work with these materials, all kinds of different materials on a regular basis. And you don't think anything's going to happen, or if it does happen, it's not that big of a deal. We've been developing resins since 2016, and our first resins, the different model materials, our splint, our guide, they all had what we refer to as a backbone formula, meaning their raw materials all followed somewhat along the same backbone of formula. And so we just launched 3 new resins, what would have been at the beginning of this year, our gum or gingiva resin, tri-en resin, and a tray resin. And they all had a different backbone, meaning they came with the different raw materials, if you will. And I was talking to one of our chemists one day, and I noticed he had a real large blister on his hand. And I said, goodness, Aaron, what'd you do to your hand? And he kind of laughed. And again, this is a chemist of ours that develops resins in his lab, working with these resins every day. And he said, I'm so used to our previous resins, our old resins, the ones that we had started back in 16. And if I were to get those on my hands, he goes, realistically, I could just wipe it off with a towel right at that point, continue what I was doing, and then go wash my hands. He goes, didn't even think about it. Same thing happened with one of our newer resins. I picked up a towel that was sitting there on my bench and wiped it off, didn't think anything about it, finished my job that I was working on at the time. A few minutes later, went and washed my hand. Because I was actually driving home that night and I noticed my hand was burning, and he looked down and the blister was starting to begin. So it seems so simple, but even someone like that who's a chemist that is literally dealing with these resins or working with these resins every single day, it becomes almost second nature at times. And so most certainly, you'll hear it quite a bit. You'll hear me say it. You'll hear Ben say it. Follow the instructions for use. And you see within the IFU from all manufacturers of all resins, wear gloves. So you are dealing with a chemical. Be very careful. The other thing on this is if you can, the recommendation is to vent the room that you're working in. I know that's not always possible. We develop our resins to be very low odor. Most of our resins are low odor. That's not always the case. So if you can ventilate the area to help with those fumes that's in there, do that as well. So just make sure, although you're working with them every day, that you're following those necessary precautions. Of course, when you're working with the resins, as we've said multiple times, these are UV curable photopolymers. I'm sure you know by now. Put them in a box, a storage container. When you're not using them, if you're switching, say you're printing models and you're going to move to surgical guides, take that model material, put it back in the box that it came in, put it in a storage container, put it into a cabinet or a drawer somewhere. You don't want to leave it out so that it doesn't start to cure. And then also, most people don't do this, but if you do want to pour it back into the container that it came in, there's multiple different filters out there that you can get. Probably a lot of them are paint filters that you can get at Lowe's or Home Depot. Of course, you can get them off Amazon. You can reach out to us for a recommendation. We do this from time to time when necessary, of course, with developing all these resins. That'll allow you to pour the resin from the vat or your resin tray, if you will, back into the bottle that it came in. And then if you're wanting to reuse that tray, of course, you can clean out with isopropyl alcohol and reuse that tray if that's what you're looking to do. And then how to dispose of unwanted resins. We get a lot of questions on this pretty regularly. Unpolarized resins, again, are a chemical. This most certainly isn't rural Ohio in 1980 where you're pouring your used motor oil around the shed out back so you don't have to weed eat around that shed. We've come a long way since then. We know that these are chemicals and what they can do to the environment, so please don't pour these down your sink or anything like that. If you've got an old resin, an expired resin, or an unwanted resin that you want to get rid of, you got a couple different options. One, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, so I've had this conversation with our local, it's a private company that works with the city of Cincinnati, and the way they operate, it's on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. You can drop off chemicals at their dock. By and large, people are dropping off old paint, but I've had a conversation with them, they'll accept resins. So, and that's most municipalities offer that service. So that's something you'd reach out to your local city government on to see if they have an option like that. One of the most easiest things to do is really take a piece of Tupperware, or if you get some kind of carry out, take a clear container from your carry out, pour your resin into that clear container, put it into your curing chamber, go ahead and cure it, and then from there you can just throw it away. Kind of the same thing with alcohol, with your dirty alcohol. There are a couple different companies out there that sell recycling machines that'll recycle that alcohol so that you can reuse it. I've gotten feedback that those work very well. Or you can just set the alcohol out in the sun and it will eventually evaporate, and then any resin that is in there will of course then also polymerize or solidify, and then you can just throw it in the garbage just like you would if you cured the resin. And then the other big question we get as well is on, can I recycle this resin? And currently 3D printed resins, once they've been printed, cannot be recycled. So what to look for in a quality resin? There are a lot of resins out there right now, a lot of good resins out there. I had one person tell me they can walk out their door and throw a rock and hit 50 resin manufacturers right now, which we all know that is absolutely the truth. But what to look for in a quality resin? Low shrinkage, low warpage, low odor, suspended pigments, right? How often do you have to mix that up? How often do you have to shake that bottle? How long do you have to shake that bottle if you allow it to sit for a certain amount of time? Biocompatibility, of course, is huge. So there are a lot of good resins on the market. And by and large, as you can think of with everything, when it comes to resins, you get what you pay for.